Another Twist of Fate is in fourth. Chase the Ghost is still trying to find some momentum at the center of the racetrack, moving up from fifth. Owendale swinging very wide at the quarter pole, and Owendale has picked up about 5 positions in the span of a 16th of a mile. Owendale comes blasting off the far turn for the lead.
Cortland Simmons with you here at the CS Racing Report Road to the Roses series, and we have come to the end of the road for the 2019 trail to the Kentucky Derby, ending with the Lexington Stakes at the historic Lexington Oval. Keeneland, a mile and a 16th for these 3-year-olds, a 28, 4, and 2 format points-wise, 20 points to the winner, 8 to the runner-up, 4 points to the third-place finisher, and 2 points for the fourth-place horse. And going into this race, Another Twist of Fate was coming in off of his wins in the El Camino Real Derby and a rousing second to Cutting Humor and a very swift time in the Sunland Derby, and he was the favorite coming in along with Sueno, second in both the Sham and the Southwest. Disappointed a little bit when trying to sort of pace press in the Louisiana Derby. He was coming in, Harvey Wallbanger, 8th in the Florida Derby a couple weeks back after winning the Holy Bull at 29-1. So those were among the feature horses, along with Zendon, a front-running type that had run very well in a very credible 4th-place finish in the Tampa Bay Derby. And in the end, it turned out to be sort of a newcomer that ended up arriving on the scene, a horse by the name of Owendale, trained by Brad Cox, the colt that I didn't think really had as much of a chance. A lot of people were wondering what his prospects in this Lexington Stakes would be after an 8th place run in the Risen Star. He skipped the Louisiana and Arkansas Derbies and subsequently the 9 furlong route races of higher importance to run in this spot. But in this Lexington Stakes, after fractions of 24.33, 48.23 for the half mile, and 112.88 for the 3/4, Owendale just swept 5 wide and circled the field and went on to win impressively by 1 3/4 lengths over Another Twist of Fate, who was a length and a quarter in front of Sueno, who was 5 lengths in front of the disappointing Knicks Go. At least he did hit the board, at least filled out the superfecta in this race, but it was a captivating move, sort of the likes of, dare I say Secretariat, but more in terms of on this recent Derby trail of Supersteed when he circled 5, 6 wide in the Southwest Stakes before he sustained an injury in the post-race of that and ended up going off the Derby trail. And also in other Derby news, Maximus Mischief, the winner of the 2018 Remsen, is also among one of those hitting the sidelines. He's officially been retired at press time of this Lexington Stakes recap here at the CS Racing Report. But a very impressive performance by Owendale under Florent Geroux. And he, of course, is going to be very much in the news because he is going to be the new rider for Roadster in the Kentucky Derby. Mike Smith made the decision to take off the Santa Anita Derby winner to ride Omaha Beach, the winner of the Arkansas Derby winner. So that's creating a storyline in and of itself. He won the Triple Crown with Bob Baffert in the previous year with Justify, and now he's going to be riding against him. Let's see if that turns out to be a decision that's the rightful one, or one that is going to be filled with sadness and regret if one of those Baffert horses, particularly Roadster, wins the Run for the Roses. But as far as Owendale's prospects, final time 144.14 for the mile and a 16th. He basically is putting himself in a position, like most people would believe, short term to run in the Preakness Stakes. It's a race that I think would suit him. He's a big growthy colt and he's finally lived up to his potential. But I believe that, and some others may concur or others would maybe disagree, that this horse probably should go around the fringes of the classic races, because running in the Preakness Stakes, even though you might have tired horses coming from Churchill Downs along with new shooters that may not have any more talent than Owendale, it's a tough spot to go into running from 8.5 to 9 furlongs, because I would imagine that Brad Cox, his trainer, probably won't run him in cut back and run in the Pat Day Mile and then run him 2 weeks later in the Preakness. That's a Triple Crown schedule, even if you want to believe running 8 furlongs and going from that flat mile to the 9.5 furlongs is not as taxing a prospect as coming out of the 1.25 miles of the Derby and coming back 13.5, 14 days later to run essentially the same distance at 1 mile and 3/16 minus the 110 yards. So for Owendale's future prospects, some races that I think maybe the Pat Day Mile works, maybe the Peter Pan works a little bit better, and he could possibly be a contender for the Belmont Stakes, but it's quite an ambitious and tall order, whether they take a look at the Preakness, the Middle Jewel, or the Final Jewel of the Classic Series. There's some other opportunities, a lot of really nicely structured and rich, lucrative, graded races for 3-year-olds. There's the Matt Winn Stakes back at the Churchill Oval. There's also the Indiana and Ohio Derbies. And then maybe perhaps you can take a look at the Hask or the Jim Dandy. There's also the West Virginia Derby that carries a really, really nice purse. So that could be a preparation plan that could lead to a run in the Travers, maybe the Pennsylvania Derby. Some other spots, being that Cox is sort of Kentucky tri-state based, could be the Pennsylvania Derby, as Vafer mentioned, the Lucas Classic at Churchill Downs, and then contemplate whether that puts him in a classic position or maybe cut back to the flat mile. And then you also have at Churchill the Clark Handicap. That could be his Breeders' Cup along with the Cigar Mile, but the Clark is also a very good spot. The point is that I think Owendale is a horse that if you really, really don't put him through the ringer of the Classic Series, could be a really nice 3-year-old and a great 4-year-old. I think a lot of people would like to see horses like Owendale, the like, be developed to be really, really nice horses for the future rather than be just literally whisked away to the breeding shed. But again, he was very impressive in the way he just circled horses and made up tremendous ground. He's a horse that actually tactically shows a lot of speed, and in this race, he just took off, won very impressively. When looking at Another Twist of Fate, he ran a good race. He got 8 points out of this. It puts him on the bubble, and we'll talk more about the Derby point situation in our build up to the Kentucky Derby podcast. And, Sueno with 32 points is probably not going to get in. I think Another Twist of Fate has 38, so he's a bit on the bubble. We all know that Another Twist of Fate has already punched a ticket to the Preakness Stakes. That was an automatic berth set up by the Stronach Group that owns Golden Gate Fields as well as a number of other tracks across North America. So he punched that automatic berth to the Middle Jewel by winning the El Camino Real Derby. So he was always going to have an opportunity to be granted an invitation to one of the classic races. Obviously, Blaine Wright would have liked to have qualified the horse for the Kentucky Derby, but Another Twist of Fate looks like a very interesting prospect still for the Preakness, and Owendale could possibly show up as well. Sueno is another candidate, and there are a number of other horses. We're certainly going to talk more about that as we move on to the first leg of the Triple Crown, that being the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. But nonetheless, for Brad Cox, it's Owendale winning the 2019 Lexington Stakes in 144.14 by 1 3/4 lengths over Another Twist of Fate, with Sueno third and Nix go fourth. Owendale, the winner of the Keeneland Lexington Stakes.
And now Zendon moves up to join them from third. Another Twist of Fate is in fourth. Chase the Ghost is still trying to find some momentum at the center of the racetrack, moving up from fifth. Owendale swinging very wide at the quarter pole, and Owendale has picked up about 5 positions in the span of a 16th of a mile. Royal is going to be running late, still 8 lengths from the lead, but Owendale comes blasting off the far turn for the lead. Nix goes second, Another Twist of Fate third, Sueno is in fourth, Chang is fifth. Owendale, final furlong of the Stone Street Lexington. Another Twist of Fate runs on towards second, Sueno third. Owendale, Florent Giroux to win it at 12-1.